All right, let's dive into something that sounds like it's been pulled straight out of science fiction: 3D bioprinting. And no, we're not talking about printing little plastic toys. We're talking about building things with the fundamental blocks of life itself.
Just think about this for a second. Imagine a world where waiting for an organ transplant is a thing of the past. Seriously, what if, instead of hoping for a donor, a surgeon could just print you a new kidney or a liver, one that's a perfect match because it's made from your very own cells? That, right there, is the incredible promise of 3D bioprinting.
So to really get it, let's break down the huge difference here. We all kind of know how 3D printing works, right? You use plastic or metal to build an object layer by layer. Well, bioprinting uses that same idea, but the ink is completely different. It's this special gel called bioink, and it's jam-packed with living cells. So the goal isn't to make a static model, it's to create actual, living, functional tissue.
Okay, so this sci-fi promise, what does it actually mean for us right now? Because this isn't just about printing whole organs someday down the road. This technology is already being used to tackle some really big problems in medicine, research, and, well, even in places you would never ever expect.
The absolute secret sauce to all of this is the bioink. You can think of it as a complete life support system for the cells while they're being printed. It's this super carefully designed gel that not only holds the cells in place, but also feeds them nutrients and gives them the structural cues they need to survive and start organizing themselves, just like they would inside your body.
So this all sounds incredibly cool, but how do you actually do it? How do you get from a digital file on a computer to a living, breathing piece of tissue? It sounds impossibly complex, but you can actually break the whole process down into a few key steps. First up, you've got the prep work. Scientists take scans from a patient, like a CT or an MRI, to create a super precise digital blueprint. At the same time, they take a small sample of the patient's cells and grow millions and millions of them. Then comes the actual printing, where that bioink, now loaded with all those cells, is laid down layer by tiny layer. And finally, and this part is key, the freshly printed structure goes into a special device called a bioreactor. That's where it goes from being just a clump of cells to actual mature tissue. And you really can't skip this final step. It's absolutely critical. A bioreactor is basically a high-tech incubator. It provides the perfect environment, all the nutrients, the oxygen, even physical things like pressure and fluid flow, to coax the cells into working together, forming blood vessels, and really maturing into a stable piece of tissue that can actually function.
Now, you might think there's just one way to do this, but nope. Just like an architect has different ways to design a building, scientists have a few different strategies for building with life. Let's take a quick look at the main game plans.
So the first approach is called biomimicry. This is all about trying to build a perfect microscopic replica of natural tissue. The second, autonomous self-assembly, is kind of wild. You basically create the perfect conditions and then trust the cell's natural ability to organize themselves, sort of like what happens when an embryo develops. And then there's the hybrid Lego block approach, using what are called mini-tissues. Here, scientists print tiny, functional chunks of tissue and then assemble them together to build something bigger. And to pull off these different strategies, you need different tools, right? Different kinds of printers. You've got inkjet-based ones that are super fast. Laser-assisted printers can give you unbelievably high resolution for fine details, but the most common type you'll see is extrusion-based printing, which carefully squeezes out the bioink layer by layer, a lot like a classic 3D printer does.
Okay, so enough about the theory and the lab work. Where is this stuff actually showing up in our world? Let's talk about the real-world impact that is already happening as we speak. One of the first and honestly biggest impacts is on how we develop new medicines. Instead of relying on animal testing, which isn't always a perfect predictor for humans, researchers can now print small, functional bits of human organs, like these kidney tubules. This lets them test new drugs on biologically accurate human tissue, which could make the whole process faster, cheaper, and a whole lot safer. And this is a moment that just gives you goosebumps. In 2022, we saw this technology move from a cool idea in a lab to a real-life patient. It was a total game changer. A woman who was born with a condition called microtia received a 3D bioprinted ear implant, and it was made from her own cartilage cells. This was the first successful clinical trial of its kind, and it was proof that this tech can be used to create living, personalized transplants. But hold on, because it is not just about medicine. What if I told you this same technology could end up on your dinner plate? I'm serious.
In a pretty amazing twist, scientists are using bioprinters to create cultured meat. By printing tiny fibers of muscle, fat, and even blood vessel-like structures, they can assemble something that looks and tastes like a steak without ever needing an animal. Just think about what that could mean for our food system. And it doesn't stop there. How about cleaning up the planet? Yep, scientists are now able to print biofilms. These are basically structured little communities of microorganisms that are specifically designed to eat up and break down pollutants in our water and soil. It's a brand new tool for helping heal the environment. So you can see this is not some far-off dream. It's here and it's growing fast. But what about that ultimate goal, the big one, printing entire organs whenever we need them? What does that future look like?
All right, let's pump the brakes just a little. We are not there yet, not by a long shot. There are some massive hurdles that scientists are still trying to get over. Probably the biggest is figuring out how to print a working network of blood vessels. Without blood flow, any thick tissue would just die from the inside out. Plus, just replicating the insane complexity of an organ and getting the billions of cells you'd need are huge challenges they're still working on.
So no, we can't just hit print on a new heart today, at least not yet. But you can see the pieces are all coming together. Every single one of those challenges is being tackled by brilliant people all over the world. And it really makes you wonder, right? What is our world going to look like when organ donor lists are a thing of the past? When life-saving tissue can just be created on demand? That's a future that's definitely worth building,